everybody. Very happy to introduce you to my new voice panel. We've all made it here today, which is excellent. And they're going to start us off with an introduction to themselves and their book, starting with RJ, because you're at the top today.
I am. Hi, I'm RJ Barker. This is my first book, A Numbers Game, which is about Mal Jones and Jackie Sinkata. Mal's a pretend medium and a con man, but with a good heart. He's trying to help people. And Jackie's a borderline psychopath, and together they kind of make one person, and they get out and get into quite terrible, violent trouble. But they're funny and they're gritty and they're very northern, and they're based maybe in Leeds, maybe in another northern city. And the second book, Incy Wincy, came out yesterday, and it's been getting really good reviews, so that's been joyous.
Excellent. Angela, do you want to go next?
Okay, this is me. I write the Jacques Foray mystery stories, which are set in the Cevennes in South Central France. I also write short stories and other stuff for various different anthologies, but Jacques is my favourite character.
And Allie?
Hi, I'm Allie Davies. My debut psychological thriller, The Fate She Sees, came out 2 weeks ago. It's about an artist called Emily, and she's haunted by her past. And she takes the night tube home one night, and this mysterious man predicts her future. And he says 3 people in your life are going to betray you, and somebody's going to be pointing a gun at your head. And basically the story is she's trying to figure out who that person is going to be.
Sounds fascinating. So, why don't you all start us off by introducing us to, I normally say your main character, but let's go for your favourite character that you write.
Who's going first? I'll go first.
Yeah, you go on.
It's really difficult, but I'm going to choose the one the readers like the most, which is Jackie Sinkata from these. He's a gangster, basically. He's ex-army. He's incredibly handsome, unbelievably cocky, almost completely without morals, but something in him wants to do the right thing. And he doesn't always know what the right thing is, so he relies on Mal, his friend, to tell him where he should be going. He likes to sleep with people, and he'll sleep with anybody. He's a proper Renaissance man. He likes men, he likes women, he likes big, he likes small, old. He likes everybody. And he's the sort of person, one reviewer called him, he's a psychopath, but he's our psychopath, which is what makes him work. And there's just something about him that I don't think I'd want to go for a drink with him, because I'd be terrified he was going to kick off at any point. But I also know that if I was with him, I would be safe, because he would look after you, because that's what he does. He has he's very loyal to the people he likes, even though there isn't many of them. But I kind of thought all the readers would be a bit wary of him, and they'd gravitate to Mal, who's much easier to understand. He's easygoing and a bit sort of scared of how scary the world is. But it seems to be Jackie people like. As one reader emailed me, she just said, well, he'd get it. I was like, that's not really what you meant to think, but everyone seems to like him. So that's good.
Good answer. Angela, do you want to introduce us to your favourite character?
I guess my favourite character to write is Richard Laurent Delacroix. He's the kind of guy that you absolutely love to hate. There's a mystery about who and what he is. He doesn't turn up until towards the end of book 2. And when he does turn up, you kind of know that there's something about this guy that you just can't trust. And he then turns up in the other books too, although Jack does catch up with him eventually and gets him put away, because he is a bit of a crim. And he dabbles in all kinds of stuff. And although his name is Richard Laurent Delacroix in the books and to all of the readers, he could be somebody else. He could be anybody else. he says he comes from Canada, but he could actually come from anywhere. So he's quite a mystery, and I absolutely love writing him because I never know what he's going to do next. And despite all my planning for my stories with him in them, he still never seems to conform to my plan. He always goes off and does something completely different and surprises me. So I hope he surprises the readers too.
Go on, Allie.
My favourite character is the mysterious man who my protagonist meets on the tube. I can't say too much about him because there's, he is obviously mysterious and he plays a lot into the plot. But I had so much fun writing him because Emily, the protagonist, she's going through some problems in a marriage and a personal life, a career. So obviously she's in quite a dark place, whereas the mysterious man brought some sort of light, dry humour as well. His character, his character comes across a bit more light, and it was nice to have that dark and that lightness to play with. But Emily meets him a few times, and she's drawn to him. He's very intriguing to her, and there's more to him than meets the eye. And I can't really say too much because it might give things away.
Fair enough. Shall we go with like one of the standard kind of interview questions? What drew you into writing crime?
Are we going to say we're round again?
We can do if you want to. I feel like you have the answers to hand.
I love a mystery. I think that's kind of one of my favorite things. One of my first things I read was Sherlock Holmes when I was quite young, and then I worked my way through Agatha Christie. Big Miss Marple fan because she's a monster. I like Miss Marple. There's no pity in her, and I like that about her. And it's that idea of who is it, and justice, and it's really satisfying to have a mystery that resolves itself and all things, and I like that. And Mal and Jackie they're not detectives in the true sense, in that they're not really working things out. They're more causing a lot of trouble until somebody feels the need to try and kill them, and that's how you find out who did it. But there's also a very classic mystery going on around that reveals itself, and I love that. And then afterwards I started reading the American crime writers like Robert Crace and James Lee Burke, who are probably more thrillery than British crime, very psychological, which I like, but they're more thrillery and action. I like to write action, so this is kind of thrillery crime, but it's the mystery. I love it. I just who did it? It's such a good question. Always such a good question, and it drives a plot. It keeps you going. And what are these people's secrets? Because everyone in a crime book has a secret, because that's the way it works. So you just want to nosiness, basically. I think that's it. I'm just professionally nosy. That's how I write.
Good answer. We're carrying on round, Angela.
Yeah, okay. I guess I kind of fell into writing crime because of the weather. But like RJ, I've always read crime, and I love crime stories. I love Agatha Christie, Edgar Allan Poe, and Minette Walters, and there's hundreds and hundreds of other writers out there, and I absolutely love reading their books, which probably makes what I'm going to say next a bit strange, because when I decided I was going to write books, I started writing romance. I don't quite know why I decided that, but I did for whatever reason. And it was only when I was actually in the Cevennes in 2007. I was staying at one of my favourite campsites. It was late September. It was the 27th of September. And I'd arrived on a beautiful autumn day. The trees were golden and the inky green of the pines. The landscape looked fabulous. And the next morning I woke up to snow, which is not that unusual in that area of France. But for some particular reason, that morning when I was watching it snowing, my mind just turned to murder. And I thought, if you know that this is going to happen in an area that is so sparsely populated, you really could get away with murder. And by about 2:00 that afternoon, I'd got what I thought was an absolute killer of a first line for a book. Didn't know what book I was going to write or what the story was going to be, but I just got this fabulous opening line and this idea that you could use snow to cover your horrible misdeeds. And it kind of just grew from there. That was 2007, and it wasn't until 2011 that I actually started writing my first book, Massandriere. And it took a bit of doing because I still had this thing about writing romance. So the crime was kind of secondary. And I was actually at a workshop because I thought I needed to properly skill myself to write crime if I was going to do that next, because that was going to be the next book after this romance that I was writing. And one of the tutors was Michael Fowler, who writes police procedurals. And when we were doing our creeping death on the first day when we got there, the first thing he said to me was, after I'd introduced myself, he said to me, "If you're writing romance, why are you here?" I thought, okay, tad rude, but it made me think, and it made me make a choice, and it made me realise that that day in the Cevennes back in 2007, I had the nugget of something, and I just needed to look at it from a different point of view, and I guess the rest is history.
Go on, Allie.
Growing up, I always wanted to be the next Beatrix Potter. All my stories involve talking animals. I don't know where along the way to murder. But I actually, when I did a writing degree at Middlesex University about 20 years ago now. And all my assignments were quite, there were more women's fiction, and then I really got into screenwriting, and on my screenwriting assignment we had to write a sequence, and I just started writing a sequence that I then put into the novel. And I watch a lot of thrillers, horror, and I love like what RJ said about the secrets. Everyone's got a secret and a dark past, and I just love delving into people's people's psyches and that. And yeah, it's just something I watch. I read a lot of psychological thrillers, and that's where, if I go in the supermarket, that's where my eyes are drawn to. So it was just natural really for me to start writing a thriller, and it's where I feel really comfortable. That's how I got into it.
I've missed a couple of comments off the stream. So Sam RJ had said, "Congratulations on your recent release."
Thank you.
She also really liked your comment about professional nosiness. She said she's putting it on her CV.
Well done.
And then she's asked you all if your settings are places that readers can visit, or are they fictional?
You can definitely visit my settings. The Cevennes really is a place in France, in south central France. From where I live, it's about 800 miles south. It's a fabulous area. It's very sparsely populated. It's like living at the top of a mountain. And the city of Mons is halfway up a mountain, and it's very, very small. And despite the fact that it's only got 12,000 inhabitants, it's as administratively, politically, and socially as important as Leeds is to our county of West Yorkshire. It's just how things are done over there. And one of my books is called Marseille, and yeah, it's real. And the locations I talk about in the book are also real. I've walked those streets. Yeah, anyone can go to any of the locations in my books.
Who wants to go next, Ali? Do you want to do next?
Well, mine is my debut set in London. A lot of scenes on the Underground, and the main character lives in East London in Bethnal Green, and her studio, she's an artist, her studio is in Aldgate. So yes, it's very, very real. I did actually, during the last year, I think it was just after the first lockdown, I went down to London and I actually walked my character's footsteps, which I really enjoyed. I went to where I'd set her studio, where I set her apartment. There's Bethnal Green Gardens. I took the walk that she would have that went onto Brick Lane, because we do have some scenes set down Brick Lane. There's also, forgive me, I can't remember what the park's called. There's a railway bridge. There's a bit of a park. Sorry, I can't remember what it's called, but that features in the novel. It was just really, really fun to actually walk in my character's footsteps. But yeah, she definitely can visit where the novel's set.
You can't, for me. It's in an unspecified northern town, and I don't say where. And it's set around a very rundown council estate called Blades Edge, and I deliberately didn't want to choose a real estate because it kind of that Jeremy Kyle thing of saying, look at these people, they're terrible. I didn't want to do that. So I created a not real place that I could have the adventures I wanted in. And also it can have the geography I want, which is really easy as a writer, because people say, yeah, you can get there to there easily. If you write a real place, people are going, well, you can't get a bus from there to there. So no, it doesn't exist. But one of the lovely things is I've had quite a lot of email from people all over the country saying, I know what you based on. You based on where I grew up. And some of them think it's down south and some of them think it's up here. And it's not. It's an entire figment of my imagination. But the next one, She Sells, towards the end of lockdown, I was so desperately missing the sea that one's set in Whitby. And you can follow everywhere, because I love Whitby and I know it really well. So you can follow everywhere in that one around. But the other two, no, you'd just be running around Leeds. Not Leeds, a northern town, confused, looking for places that I have entirely made up.
Do you find, I've got a follow-up question based on that. Do you find it harder to sort of market it then if it's on a fictional place, because you can't sort of be like meet the local?
Not really, because I don't actually ever concern myself with thinking about marketing and stuff. As a publishing company, it's up to them. But I know when it went around the big publishing companies, the reason it didn't get picked up by one of the big ones was a lot to do with marketing, and so maybe that's hard. Not also that it's very working class, and you don't tend to see many working class detectives in England for whatever reason. It's not something that we see a lot of. But I don't know. I don't really think about marketing. It's of no interest. I want to write books. I'll just come and shout at people like I'm doing today. But yeah, I think it's sold on the two people. I don't think it's sold on where it is. I think if you start to read it, you'll buy into those people and you won't care about anything else.
They do sound fantastic, the two people. So I'm going to read out Sam's next question because I think it's brilliant. Leslie Lloyd has said hello, everyone, as well. Sam has said she loves secrets and dark paths in books. She's not going to ask you if you have any, by the way. She's asked if you have ideas for them in your heads before you start to write. Do you want to start us off, Ali?
Do I have ideas for them? Yeah, I always think when I'm thinking of a character, what's their backstory? That's really important because that drives the narrative for me. I work out the plot from the backstory. So for book 2 that I'm writing now, I'm my main character, trying to work out her backstory. So yeah, I do always, character does come first, really, and then the plot then comes from that.
And Angela next.
I kind of have ideas all the time, and I've got 90 million notebooks where I jot stuff down. So when I come to thinking about an actual story, I often draw from those notes. I do like to build my characters from kind of the toes upwards, and I ask myself loads of questions about the characters, and sometimes those questions lead me to bits and pieces of things that I've jotted down in my notebooks. So I suppose the true answer to the question is, yeah, I do have ideas. They're not necessarily all about one particular person. They might be about any person, and I just have to brigade them and organise them when I get round to thinking about a particular book or a particular story. So it's kind of half of one and half of the other, really.
I know Mal and Jackie backwards because they as characters they've been with me for about 12 years. They were a book I tried writing. I never got anywhere with them. Then one day I thought, hang on, you're writing like book 6 of a really long series. You need to start at the beginning. So because of that, I know them really well. But with everything else, I tend to know who did it at the end and why they did it. And then I just blunder through the book and see what happens, because I found out that my subconscious is far better at doing this than I am. Because if I plan it out, it's a mess. But if I just write it, it tends to kind of, I'll suddenly realize I've written all the pieces in, and then I just have to fit them together. And it's kind of really, really pleasing thing to do. But that's you create a puzzle for yourself and then solve it. That's the way I do it, and I really enjoy that bit.
Good answer. So we've had a bit of a sort of discussion of reviews and things as well. I've had a week of people asking me really crazy things. So what's like the craziest question you've been asked at an author thing, or the craziest review you've had? You can choose.
I was doing a talk once about it was just before the pandemic, and this lady, I'd been talking about my books, so I'd mentioned murder and all the rest of it, and this lady came up afterwards to have a look at the books and to decide if she wanted to buy one, and her question was, they don't have any deaths in there, do they? I kind of thought, okay, fine. So I got around the question by saying, well, yes, unfortunately, 1 or 2 people do die, but I said, there's no blood, there's no gore, and there's no guts. It's all done very nicely and very quietly. But she didn't buy anything.
I had somebody email me to say I enjoyed your book, but it was a bit violent. It's a murder mystery. There's going to be violence. I mean, it is quite violent. Jackie's quite violent, but well, maybe don't read them. They might not be for you. But I don't think I've ever had anything really crazy asked of me. I've had things asked of me that made me realise stuff that I'd not realised about the book, which is quite an interesting thing. But I'll leave that for another question.
This is actually my first interview, so it's the first time I've actually been asked anything apart from like friends asking, but a lot of friends usually say, what goes on inside your head? Yeah, I'm not really experienced any other questions yet.
I work at a school. You get crazy questions on a hourly basis at times. So, one of our favourite group questions. Well, we have several, so we'll have a spate of our favourite group questions. But one of them is: have you ever acted out a scene as you've written it? And you have to give us the details. Our favourite one so far has been someone acting out a fight on Whitby Pier.
Well, like I said before, I actually walked my character's footsteps. So I did try and get into my character's head and how she felt in that moment. But when I'm editing, I actually read it back and do the dialogue. And I do have an acting background, which really does help. It helps with dialogue. I'm like, oh, that's not quite right. But yeah, I do sometimes get into it, and then it's usually when my daughter's at school and my husband's at work, and then the cats are looking at me like, who are you talking to? Yeah, I do really enjoy reading it aloud because it just really helps me make the dialogue sound more authentic, and yeah, it's just fun.
Yeah, like you, Ali, I have an actor's background. I've been working on stage since I was about 6. So whenever I find I've got a knot in my story, irrespective of whether it's prose or dialogue, I tend to just stand up and read it. And it's amazing how much you can see where the language jars, where the words are not right, and how much it flows or not. Yeah, I have acted out scenes. One in particular in the first book was between Jacques and his little hero, his little 5-year-old hero called Pierre. I spent quite a lot of time acting that out because I just couldn't seem to get it right. However, I must have got it right in the end because it's one of the scenes that was often commented on by other readers. But yeah, and it's quite frequent for me to be sat at the keyboard talking to myself. Yeah, that's quite normal.
I too have an acting background. Yeah, and I like to read out loud. I'm quite a fun reader to watch when I do it, and it helps you feel how the dialogue is bouncing it. And because Jackie is a man of action, and there are fight sequences in that, I can quite often, because I write in my front room. I don't have an office because I'm not that swish, and I'll quite often be choreographing a fight scene by standing up and walking around and going, "You're there," and "You're there." But does everyone else have a monologue in their head? I have a monologue in my head, and that is all writing is. It's just putting the monologue on. It's just sort of slightly changing the voice and putting it in. So it's always there, that kind of actingness of it.
Absolutely.
Good answers. We obviously paired you three well, didn't we? If you've all got an acting background without even knowing it.
We can make a theatre group.
I've just got a script off my shelf here, and we can start doing it. No problem.
Another group favourite question is, what are your most memorable moments as an author?
Oh gosh. I guess that for me would be when I opened the email from Crooked Cat Books, as they were then, saying that they would like to see the whole of my manuscript. I was in France. I hadn't got my manuscript with me. It was at home on the desktop, and I was having a dance on the ceiling, and I suddenly thought, oh God, how am I going to do this? I'm not home for another month. Anyway, got it sorted. But yeah, I think I was dancing on the ceiling for the rest of my time in France, and for a good bit after I got home too.
I think for me, for this book, because I write professionally, for other stuff, I do other things. Was my literary agent, the amount of belief that he poured into this book, he absolutely loved it. And when he read it the first time, he said it's. I don't think it's like anything that's in the market at the moment, and that will go either one of two ways. It will either people will fight over it, or people will go, we're not quite sure how to market it, and that's how it went. But he never gave up. He just kept saying, I love this book, and I'm going to find somebody, and eventually found Words Back, quite a small publisher, but they believe it's been really lovely to have these people who absolutely believe in this book and the characters. It always felt like my odd little thing that didn't fit anywhere, and that's been really nice for me. And my agent keeps going, kick off.
Mine was when so there was advanced review copies, and a reviewer messaged me on my Facebook, my author page, telling me how much she loved the book, and just a reader just say how much she loved it. Just the comments she said about it, I was in tears. I really was. It was just amazing But this is a stranger. I think she was in America, and it's like, wow, it was just that validation of my work, and that it was really, really amazing. Yeah.
I don't think we realise our power sometimes as readers, do we? To sort of make.
It's amazing when you hear from readers. Really, like my wife generally doesn't read anything I do because a lot of it isn't to her taste. And she picked up a numbers game and really liked it, and then she read the second one, and she's read the third one, which hasn't been published yet. And now she's actually angry with me because I've not written another one. And she's the most critical person I know, so I'm quite. That's been a huge thing for me. All right, if you like it, I'm doing all right.
I think also the best review I've had so far was actually from my 9-year-old daughter. Well, she's nearly 9. She said, "I'm so proud of you, Mummy. I can't believe my mum's an author." And I was literally like tears again to hear it from her. And I'm inspiring her because she's an amazing little writer. She is. The things that she comes out with, it's just absolutely amazing. And knowing that I'm inspiring her as well, and she wants to be an author, or she says she wants to be an illustrator, and she's going to illustrate my books. She really wants to read my book, and I'm like, maybe not yet.
When you get older.
Sam has asked, based on that, like, who reads your books first? Who's your first readers?
I have a group of 3 people that have read more or less everything I've done, and I like them because I trust them to tell me something's rubbish because they're scathing and deeply unpleasant in many ways, I find. But I know their personalities as well. So I know when one of them says, I don't like this, that's because it doesn't work with them. And that's really, really useful. But then when all 3 of them are coming back and saying that this is a bit weird, then I know I've got something wrong. But if it's just one, and if it's 2 of them I'm thinking about it, so that's really useful to have a little group of people who you trust, who you know how they react as well. And know that they can be absolutely honest with you. Too honest quite often. But I love them, and now my wife has to read them as well, as I said.
I'm a member of a writers group. I've been a member of the group since about 2009, and whilst we've had various changes, there's a core of the group that I totally trust. And when I've got a scene that I can't seem to get right, I take it to them at one of our meetings, and and they knock it about and criticise it, and I know I can trust everything they say, and I usually take on board what they tell me. I also have a very close friend, I've known her for years, called Carol, and she will read my stuff and come back to me, and yet again, she's extremely straight with me, and I trust her point of view as a reader. And when she says it's wrong, I know for certain it's got to be wrong, and I've got to rethink and redraft.
I'm in a writing group as well, so people in the group read it, but because quite a lot of the novel, it originally was a screenplay that I wrote while I was at university. So my lecturer read quite a lot and gave me some great feedback. So yeah, well, it was actually my university lecturer who read in the screenplay form, and then I adapted it into the novel.
Fair enough. Leslie, I think this is, has said that she's scathingly honest when she beta reads. Do you think she needs to be? It's no good pussyfooting around, is what she said.
And as a writer, that honest. If you meet a writer that gets really annoyed when people are honest with them, I'm always a bit confused. Your job is to read criticism and think, right, which of this can I cope with and which do I not agree with, and sorting through that. But it's better for somebody to be too honest and say too much for you, because you can chuck stuff out, because you need that sort of inner confidence in the things you want to do. Than for people to be a bit mimsy about it. it's much better to have everything thrown at you. As long as they sugar the pill a bit, that's nice. But yeah, your beta readers need that, but they need to be strong with you, not strong, just truthful.
A kind of good news, bad news, good news sandwich is how I view it. You like when you do feedback as a teacher, this is really good, you've made a really lovely effort, but you need to do this to improve. I'm very sorry if you can pick up on it, but like my neighbours seem to have decided tonight is the night to have a massively loud dance party outside.
Can't hear it.
I can, it's quite distracting. Sorry. Why today is the night for a rave, I do not know, but apparently it is around here. And Sam has asked, while I'm not being distracted, how you all plan for publication day. Do you have like a kind of publication day ritual? Because RJ, you've got quite a lot of books out. Do you have like a publication day kind of celebration?
No, not really. It's really, really weird. I know a lot of my writer friends are really sort of excited to get their books and look at them and touch them. And that sounds wrong, doesn't it? It makes them sound like some sort of weird book fetishists, and they're not. I'm not interested in the book once I've finished it. Once the editing's done, it's not malleable. It's gone then. It's somebody else's, and I'm doing the next thing, and that's what interests me. It's the process of creating that I like. So I don't have any rituals about. I just sort of hope people will like it, and I'll kick around on Twitter and talk about it a bit. But there's no. Once it's gone, it's out of my control for me, and I'm not. It sounds really dismissive, but it's not. I'm thinking about the next thing, and I think a lot of people don't realise that writers are usually about a year ahead of publication. So by the time the book comes out, we're like 2 books down the line or something like that.
Yeah, I'm a bit like you, RJ. I don't have any particular ritual for publication day. Obviously, there will be tweets, Facebook posts, and stuff like that, which I've probably scheduled in about 2 or 3 months beforehand. But once the book goes to my editor, it stops being my baby as far as I'm concerned. It then just becomes a product that has to be made fit for sale, and it's all about polishing and getting the right cover and stuff. It just stopped being a creative project as far as I'm concerned at that point. And like RJ, by then I'm usually thinking about the next book, and I've probably been thinking about the next book halfway through writing the book that I was working on anyway. I suppose if I had to claim any kind of ritual, it would have to be that whenever I'm with friends, if I've had a book published, in the last 12 months, we will have a glass of champagne, and that's about it. And it's more about having friends and having a glass of champagne than it is actually about the book. But I always link it to whichever is the latest book.
Well, I had my first publication day 2 weeks ago.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah.
It was amazing. I did want to celebrate with champagne, but I was so tired because I'd had so many late nights that week leading up to it that I just drank so much coffee. I think I was so jittery. So I still need to get my champagne. But no, I was just concentrating really on marketing, doing all the social media, Facebook ads, just trying to get the word out there about the book. So yeah, but it was fun. A day I'll always remember.
I have a getting paid ritual. That's slightly different. I have a ritual when I get paid for a book, which is I'm not supple enough to get my feet up there, but I buy new boots. I get a pair of Geoffrey West boots for every book that pays money to me. That's where it goes. So that's my ritual.
So how many pairs of boots have you got?
RJ Dark has 2 pairs of boots. I'm being cagey there. But I've got 9 pairs of boots.
What's your other author name? Leslie's threatening to join the party after this if she comes to Leeds. And so we've done that. What are your favourite reads of the year so far? And it doesn't have to be crime. Just give us a good recommendation, something you've really enjoyed reading this year.
I'm going to give you 2. I read James Lee Burke's last book, A Private Cathedral, which is in his Dave Robbie show books, and I adore him. He's an astoundingly talented writer, and his work is just beautiful. And he's always hinted at the supernatural in his books. There's been like a little smidgen of it turning up, and then in this one, it has a 1,000-year-old hitman from hell appears in the book. And it does not appear in the least bit. It's so weird. It doesn't appear in the least bit strange or fantastical. It just works in the kind of deep South universe he's created. I hate him. It's just brilliant. It's astounding. And I've just read a fantasy book called Justice of Kings by Richard Swan, which is a kind of police procedural, maybe, in a fantasy world, which is really good as well. It reminded me of C.J. Sansom, whose work I really love, but in a fantasy world, it was really good.
I tend to read mostly when I'm in France, because when I'm home between October through until the following May, that's when I'm working and I don't really have that much time to read. So recently, not only this year, but over the last few months, I guess the books that have particularly affected me are The French Bakers' War, which is set in Brittany during the Second World War, during the occupation. And the emotional journey that book took me on was exhausting. It was also exhilarating too. It was a fantastic story. I'm also a member of my village book club, and I've recently read Sophie Hannah's Haven't They Grown? Which I dipped into it on the day that I collected it for the book club, whilst I was finishing my coffee after lunch, thinking, I'll just have 10 minutes, maybe 15 at the most. Next thing I know, it's 3:30 and my coffee's gone cold. And I'm nearly halfway through the book. So that's an indication of how gripping the story is. The ending didn't quite get to where I thought it was going to get to either. But no, a fabulous, fabulous book. And the other one that I've read over the past few months, which kept on coming back to me days and weeks afterwards, was Sebastian Hawke's Snow Country. It's a tome about this big, so it takes some getting through, but the characters live with you. And I found, a month, 6 weeks later, somebody would say something to me and I'd suddenly think, oh God, that's what he was getting at. That's what that means. That's her distress, and so on. The characters really do stick in your head. If you can get through that many pages, it's a good book. It really is worth reading.
My read is very special. It's Charlotte Levin's If I Can't Have You. I read that book last year and I was blown away by it. And it's thank you to that book that my book now exists, because I finished reading it and I just was so blown away. And I was writing plays at the time, and I was like, I really want to write a novel. I had written a novel quite a few years ago, which will never see the light of day. And I had
one of those.
yeah. So I had, like I said, a screenplay, and this story has been with me for quite a few years. It's never ever left me, and I really wanted to to get it out there. And it was thank you to If I Can't Have You that I thought, yeah, I'm going to write this novel. And I actually looked up Charlotte Levin on YouTube, and I found out that Sam had interviewed her. And it was thank you to Charlotte Levin's book that I actually found this group. So yeah, it's a really special book. I love it. I will read that book so many times. It's fantastic. And I've also read, I love reading Holly Seddon's and Gillian McAllister's books, because I love their podcast, The Honest Authors. I will listen to that religiously. And they both got books coming out this year. Holly's is coming out next week, actually, and I can't wait to read that book. The Woman on the Bridge, it's called. So yes, they're my favourite books.
Yeah, me and Sam both enjoyed Charlotte Levin's book.
It's brilliant. I loved it. Yeah.
But yeah, there was a good one. Yeah, Sam did interview her last year.
Yeah, it was a great interview. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And she should be here tonight, Sam, but she's poorly, so you get me instead. I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to think. I've just recently read a YA book called Firekeeper's Daughter, which is brilliant. It's like someone who's torn between their Native American kind of family and their non-Native family, and then they get drawn into sort of investigating a crime as well, and it's just superb. One of those really beautiful books when you go to read them. And I'm going to ask you another favourite group question next, which is, what's the most recent scene that you wrote, without giving away a spoiler?
Go on, RJ.
No, you go on. I'm fine.
Oh, thank you. I'm just started book 2, and so I've just written the opening chapter, and it's about a woman who gets embroiled in a missing case, and I'm really excited about it, but I've got to do quite a bit of research to get the character right. So yeah, I really should probably step back and do the research first, but I'm really enjoying writing the scene and how she gets involved in the missing case.
Well, I suppose it's a scene I've been working on today, actually, early today. I'm working with some Canadian authors to create anthologies which are linked to the seasons, and the story that I'm writing at the moment is for the book for winter, and the scene I've been working on today is an argument between a wife and an estranged husband, and it's 1946. It's in central France. And Marguerite, my central character, I love her. She's an amazing person, and she's had to put up with so much from this guy that she unfortunately married. But yeah, it was a ding-dong of a match.
I yesterday started the 4th Mal and Jackie book, and his full name is Malachite Jones, and his constant refrain is that is the absolute worst possible name you could have if you're going to grow up on England's roughest council estate, because they just beat the crap out of him because they hated it, and his mum was a hippie, and she's referred to throughout the other 3 books as possibly the reason he's such a mess, and it just seemed obvious that the next book should start with her, because they all start with somebody coming to his medium's office, and she turns up and he's not particularly pleased about it, and she wants him to find her best friend's dog, which has gone missing, which is how they all start, with something quite innocuous, and then it turns out it's absolutely terrible people are involved and things get completely out of hand, because that's the plot line for all of them.
Oh, they sound... it's a good scene. So Sam has asked if you avoid reading the genre that you're writing. What I think she means while you're writing it.
I don't for crime. but I do for other genres that I write. I don't actually avoid them. It's really odd. Um, in fact, that's not true. I read very little at the moment. When I first got my first book published, my then agent said to me, "Was it ruined reading for you yet?" I said no, and he said there will become a point where you'll stop being able to read because you'll constantly be thinking, "What would I do?" And I've kind of hit that. It's really weird because reading has been my like hiding place for my entire life, and at the moment I find it really difficult to get into anything. So kind of yeah, but hopefully not for long. I'll find something and get back into it.
I just read anything and everything really. I always have done. And to me, reading is a different part of my head. Writing is one part of my head and reading is another. So it doesn't bother me that I might be reading crime whilst I'm still writing crime, or reading romance whilst I'm writing crime. They're not mutually exclusive for me. I guess I'm just weird in that I can compartmentalize my brain like that. But
really lucky.
I'm just catching up actually on the to-be read pile. I haven't read for a couple of months while I was editing, but I do read mainly psychological thrillers, but I do like to break it up sometime, and I love Jane Fallon's novels. I just find them so entertaining. But yeah, I do stick mainly to psychological thrillers, really.
I've been reading a lot of poetry recently, and I cannot name one poetry book I've read. I've loved them all, and they just kind of fall out of my head as soon as I've done it, and then I go back to them later on and enjoy them all over again. It's brilliant, and they're short, which is great because I've no attention span right now.
I like to read poetry. Leslie has said that your books sound intriguing, RJ. And we're going to get to a reminder of titles and stuff in a minute because we're really near the end of our time. But before that, is anyone going? So these events are lovely where we all get to meet online, but has anyone got any sort of in-person author events planned?
It's not been confirmed yet, so I hope I'm allowed to say. Tales on Trent in Stoke-on-Trent in May. I think it's Saturday the 14th. So that's going to be my first live event. So I'm really excited about that. And I'd love to go to Harrogate as well. I really want to go to
Harrogate. My next event for just anyone is Newark Book Festival, which is in July. I have got a couple of other closed events coming up. I'm at Doncaster Speakers on Monday, and I've got something in the something that I'm still working on that hasn't quite come to fruition, which will be coming up in May. But the next fully public event will be 10th of July, Newark Book Festival.
I don't think I have anything public lined up. Been a bit of a hermit. My deadlines. I've just been like, I need to finish the book. I'm going to be at York University talking to the students next week, which is really exciting because I didn't exactly go to school, so it's quite good to point that I can go and talk to students like I know what I'm talking about. That's quite exciting. And I do a podcast every 2 weeks called Writeopolis with 2 other writers. It's absolutely free for anyone to listen to. It's silly, but I think that's all I have lined up at the moment. Hopefully, a few things will come, but I let my publisher do all that.
Fair enough. And then we've got 5 minutes left. Sam has said that she's loved listening in to all of you.
Oh, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She says you're all fab. But do you want to finish us off with a reminder? So for everybody who's watching, who's like now intrigued by your books, finish us off with a reminder of who you are, your book titles, the best places to source them from, all that kind of thing.
I'm RJ Barker. This is A Numbers Game, the first Mal and Jackie book. and the second one, Incy Wincy, has just come out yesterday. And they're only available through Amazon at the moment. Maybe other places later on, but we don't know yet. Stuff's being sorted out. And that's me. And the third one, called She Sells, should be out in about 6 months from now. It's all written, but that's what we do. And they're street crime, as one reviewer called them, in that they're very working class and not the usual things you see at the moment. Apparently, I'm saying that, I'm probably entirely wrong. My agent told me to say that, so I'm just doing what he says.
Okay, well, this is me, Massandriere, and my books are set in the Sven in South Central France. There are 5 of them at the moment. My central character is Jacques Foray, and he's my detective. They are cosy crime, very cosy, with a few murders, unfortunately. I do also write romance stories, and I'm a contributor to the Miss Moonshine anthologies. And I also write dark short stories for my publisher, Darkstroke, who has a series of anthologies which are Dark Scotland, Dark London, Dark Paris. And last year I started working with some Canadian authors to create the anthologies which are based on the seasons. So Autumn Paths is already out. We're currently working on Winter Paths. And you can find all of my books on Amazon.
I'm Allie Davies, and my debut thriller, The Fate She Sees, is available on Amazon. It's about Emily, who's an artist haunted by her past, who desperately struggles to uncover the identity of a potential killer after a mysterious man predicts her future.
Lovely. And then all that's left for me to say is a massive thank you for you all joining us tonight.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for having me.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah.